What's up, people? Good morning. I'm so happy it's Friday. It's been one of these weeks where it's just, as I was mentioning probably a little bit ago on the show that I did on Wednesday, it's just been a lot on my plate, a lot on my plate. So, any opportunity to chill, I appreciate. So I think I'm gonna have a little bit of that this weekend. Looking forward to it. Definitely next weekend. Looking forward to that as well. Um, this this particular engagement that I'm gonna have with you guys has a lot to do with just kind of how I grew up seeing things and sort of parenting that I had. Hmm. I was one of the black kids that grew up. I'm not gonna say in a very volatile environment. Some cases yes, in some cases no. But my parents are very young. My mother was 20 when she had me, and my father was 23 when when both of my parents were married and had kids. So maybe there was a sense of an aloofness that they had about the world, a little bit of naivety, but not too far removed. Both of my parents are from the South, so when it comes to racism and the intensity of it, they had a front row seat to it. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist or didn't exist anywhere else in the country, but it was a little bit more prevalent in the South. But it's one thing about my parents, because particularly on my father's side, was like very, very, very culturally aware of the plights of this particular community, and I guess they didn't want to pass that on to the kids. So growing up, my parents never gave me the talk. Never gave me that. Never had a conversation about, well, when the police stop you, put your hands up, don't do this, don't do this. My parents gave me a very general sense of how to conduct myself as a young man and as a young kid. I remember my father would tell me, always have your hands to the side. Never put your hands in your pocket when you're in any kind of public facility. I didn't understand it then, of course, but it was never specific to the police. And as I got older, I realized is that my father didn't want me to feel any kind of way. My mother didn't want me to feel any kind of way, because they understand and they knew enough people, particularly, especially my father. My father knew everybody. So maybe we didn't have that experience because he knew half the fucking police force. But I was never made to feel inadequate or to be fearful of anyone. I don't care if you got a gun. I don't care if you have a uniform. I don't care if you're sitting on a bench deciding whether I'm guilty or innocent. My family never planted that. Now, they were not as naive to say that there were certain things that couldn't happen to you. But it was very much cause and effect, and that's the nature of the game that I was taught: cause and effect. But since I didn't get that message, I didn't really understand this whole fear factor of police thing, because I grew up in the 80s where it was officer friendly, and maybe that programming stuck with me in a different way. I didn't have the experience, and I'm not telling anybody not to be afraid of police. But what I'm saying is that because I didn't have that exposure, I didn't grow up thinking the police were my friend. I grew up thinking that you got to watch every motherfucking thing that comes your way, whether it's a cop, a fireman, an accountant, an attorney, anybody. Anybody. And understand people's patterns and behavior. Just in general. And know what to look for in people. Does that mean be judgmental? Not to a fault. But I think it's healthy to be just a little bit judgmental. Because patterns and pathology and behavior, that shit passes down, and it's very real. And you can say what you want to, but in the past, I can't speak to the future, but in the past it has certainly prevented me from making just a couple of mistakes. Just a couple. Antonio says, sadly, only the police harassment I've experienced growing up was from a black JPD officer. He stopped me every time he saw his car. Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten it. I've received it too. Yeah, harassment. But what does that have to do with you as a person? He's showing you who he is. He's showing you his hand. I've learned to not become attached to people's behavior and not to identify with it. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Am I saying not react to react? Yeah, you better react. I believe in getting people up off you. Real greasy too. So I'm not ready to say be passive. That's not my message. I just don't think that there's certain people you have to create a sense of fear around. It's a uniform. I don't know. I think to be coming up under that narrative, my parents gave me a talk not to feel inferior to anyone, and to clam up when you see the police sirens or the strobe lights in the background. What were you doing wrong? Some people say driving while black. Okay. I'm not ready to buy into that. No, we're getting ready to handle this however it's going to be handled. I don't have to get belligerent. I don't have to come out of character. I don't have to lower or dim who I am. I can be a very even keel person. Yeah, you pull me over. Okay, well, my windows are tinted. Okay. Do what you got to do. I'll see you in court. No, you'll see my attorney in court. Or you'll see me in court, or whatever the situation causes for. You do what you got to do and you go on about your life. Life has a whole bunch of inconveniences. Especially for us, for some reason. For some reason. But I didn't start to get paranoid about the police until I saw how y'all reacted to them. Yeah, people get killed, people get shot. I'm not ready to be paranoid. That shit fucks with you. I can't be clear-minded being paranoid, being fearful. Y'all have to understand what the psychological impact of this shit is doing. I just don't think it's necessary to be fearful of people that, I'm just going to put it out there, who only have a few weeks of training to do their job. And then they get out there and they still make ridiculous mistakes. This is the mentality that we're dealing with. You're scared of, and I don't want to make this disclaimer because it's too often said there's not, like there's not any good officers. I know quite a few myself. And they're really passionate about what they do. And it's not even really about seeing the work that they do because I know they exist. You all know they exist. But I'm not ready to sit around and carry some fear mentality. How does that serve you? How are you going to be able to effectively and intelligently get out of a situation if you're scared? Doesn't make any sense to me. And those cops who shot that young girl, here's the thing. Because I am a put myself in the other person's shoe kind of a person. If it was my daughter that was about to be stabbed, I don't care how old she was. Some people say, oh, she was a grown woman, blah, blah, blah. If my grown daughter was out there ready to get stabbed by some of these miscreant, gutter snipe ass children, hey, you call the cops. You're subject to what the result is. That's all I gotta say. I wouldn't want my child to be stabbed for a movement. I wouldn't want my child to be exposed to puncture wounds and stab wounds and have to go to the hospital and creating bills and insurance and shit like that. Okay, she was grown. Okay. I wouldn't want my grown daughter to be stabbed by a child. So if the cops were there and if I wasn't there and I had and me not knowing what was going on, if I got a phone call saying, yo, B, your kid was stabbed, really? Well, what was happening? Oh, the police was there. Well, why didn't the police take care of it? Well, they wanted her to be tased instead. Interesting. Interesting. If the scenario went another way, yo, B, your child was almost stabbed, but the cop shot the person who was about to stab her. Thank God. And a lot of people say, oh, you don't have kids, you don't know. I have common sense. I have compassion for people. I used to be a kid myself. I think that some of that should account for anything with how I see and perceive things. It should account for something. I'm not asking for a complete pass because this is my opinion. But I think about if it was my kid on the receiving end of that, would I want the cops to intervene and use excessive force? Do what you got to do to protect my child. Do what you got to do. I don't know all the specifics of what happened. I see grainy videos. I don't really have a true perspective. I'd like to be able to see things to a complete package. I know a lot of people on here, whenever there's a news story, we got to be the brilliant one that wants to be right. No, I think if it's one thing that social media has taught me, is to have everything, start to finish, before I have an opinion about something. So I don't really have an opinion, but one thing that I will say, if my daughter was on the receiving end of that knife, I don't care if it was a butter knife, I don't care if that shit was a plastic knife. De-escalate the situation by any means. That's my daughter. I don't know. I'm not really passive when it comes to my family. I'm not. When it comes to my family, y'all can listen. You can let your kids be stabbed as much as you want for the movement. For the movement that's very whimsical. Sometimes we get behind shit and sometimes we don't. We're not very consistent as other communities are. So would I allow my kid to be stabbed because y'all want the bitch to be tased instead? I'm not the one you want to be on the receiving end of that movement, because I'm going to say take her ass down. If that's my daughter. Take her down. I don't know, man. This interaction that we have with police is obviously problematic. But I think that if nothing else, what we got to do is, if we're going to use that scenario as an example, first of all, the guy that was out there is such a pussy. How you going to be out there as a grown-ass man allowing all of those women around you to run amok? Let's talk about that motherfucker for 2 seconds. You are an embarrassment to us. Brothers like you or like him, an embarrassment to men. If you, as a man, don't know how to maintain order when you got a whole bunch of women around you, you are a pussy. And you need to be dealt with. That was the shit that pissed me off more than anything. More than anything. We got a whole lot of shit we gotta really deal with. And self-policing. If that video wasn't an indication, and we don't even have to really know all the facts, we know what happened. We had a microcosm of what happened. If self-policing is what we are destined for, or some of y'all are asking for, based on that video, y'all can kiss my motherfucking ass. I wouldn't want you hooligans to fucking police me, or my kids, or my family. Y'all don't know how to diffuse shit. Look what happened. We can defund the police, but we got to defund that shit to shit that makes sense. And I don't really hear a whole bunch of bright ideas out there either. So I don't know what the fuck solutions y'all got to come up with But we got to come up with something. I want y'all to think and marinate about that. I'm out.